Hi, welcome to Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and I'm talking about calming down because we're too uptight. And most of the time that I find people uptight, there's friction. And so why can't we calm down, get along? People want to slap each other rather than high five each other nowadays. And so I'm getting upset about how upset people get. So what do? I take a deep breath in and out. And it's funny how the body can calm the mind and the mind can calm the body. But everybody's different. Everybody needs a different tool, technique for themselves. What works for me, what may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for me. But if you find what works for you, keep at it. Doesn't matter if everybody else thinks it's silly. Doesn't matter if everybody else thinks this way is better. If it works for you, hold your head high, look people in the eye, and keep doing it, right? Because we want to have pride in ourselves, but not false pride, not an egomaniac type of pride, but we have to have confidence that we know we are the only ones who can know what works for us. So your judgment will improve. You will find out what does calm you down and what doesn't, and the types of environments that make you upset. Maybe you don't have to go to those environments. You can take yourselves out of those environments. So, most of the reason I want to do calm down is because we're too uptight as a society. So it's one of those things that I want to do for the greater good. But I also have an ulterior motive, and I want you to buy this book. It's Freedom. And by James Eade. And Freedom is the story of my descent into addiction and my recovery from it. I was successful both before and after by the contemporary measures of what's successful in terms of acquisitions, material things, and money. But in my recovery, I added a spiritual dimension that wasn't present before. And so now it makes me want to help others learn what I have learned, the techniques and tools that have helped me to calm down. Because when I was upset before, what I did was ingest a foreign substance of some kind to change the way I feel. And now I know it's okay to feel the way I feel. And the way I feel will change. Feelings are not permanent. And when I would rush to change the way I felt, all I had to do was take a deep breath instead, calm myself down, and the feeling would pass. Now, we have to talk about addiction because it's a scourge in our society today. And there's no shame, there's no blame. We don't go there when we're talking about addiction because it affects too many people, too many families. And addiction is a family problem. It isn't just the person who's suffering from the addiction itself, it's all those loved ones that are involved, whether they're in addictions of their own, and many people are, although they don't call it addiction because it's something that, like workaholics, can be addicted to work and have trouble with their regular lives because of their addiction to work. But it's perceived as a good thing. So, it's society's perceptions are not always accurate. When society says you're doing well, I I tell myself, don't let praise go to your head or criticism go to your heart. Only you can know how you're really feeling. And only you can know if that feeling can change to a feeling that is better, more consistent, more sustainable, more true. And I think when I make decisions, it's better if I'm calm than if I'm agitated or anxious. So when we're talking about addiction, there's no shame, and no blame either, because it's not anyone else's fault. When I bent my knee to the tyrant of addiction, I had other people I could have blamed, but it would have served no purpose because really, if I point a finger, there's also fingers pointing back at me. It's really me. I was in charge of what I was doing, except that when I finally was in the throes of my addiction, I had no choice. The power of choice had been robbed from me, or I had given it away without knowing it, because I was under compulsions and I did not have the full power of choice that I feel now. And now that I feel it, I feel free, which is the title of the book Freedom. And with that freedom, I do not, once I know I have it, once I have regained it, I do not want to lose it. I do not want to give it up again. There's no way. So But there's really no change without change within. And it's inside ourselves where we begin. It's not our brains, it's not our hearts. It's deep inside where it starts. This is a spiritual journey. You have to get in touch with a power greater than yourself. There are forces beyond my control. And I know that there are good forces and malevolent forces. And I want to attune my energies to the ones that are for the greater good, that are going to increase the good in our lives, and that are life affirming, rather than the way I was before, which was negative, always sarcastic, pushing people down. No, you don't build yourself up by stepping on someone else's neck. It's not the way it works. And we can get caught up in saying, "Oh, but I was a lousy person because I did X or I did Y or I did Z," and we get depressed, and that's a spiral of self-loathing that leads to a relapse. So don't go down that rabbit hole. I've gone down there. It's not pleasant. It's not pretty. So I advise against doing it. And you do that by thinking something like this: the past is paralyzed, the future fraught, the present is a gift. So be here now. Remember. And my superpower might be forgetting because I forget. But if I do this once, if I calm myself down once in the morning, and I do every day, if I calm myself, really calm myself so I feel contented, serene, at peace, safe and secure, now I can regain that feeling at any point during the day. When I become aware that I'm agitated. I become aware that something is off, but it's not off with my environment. It's not off with the person I'm talking to. It's off within me, because it doesn't matter what other people think. Generally speaking, unless they're threatening you with physical violence, they can have their opinions. I used to want to change their minds, but it's important for us to be able to change our own minds so that we are confident and secure in our own thinking, our own belief system, and we feel safe and secure, even if there are people loudly saying things that we don't agree with. So we do not have to react to everything. When the stimulus comes and hits my amygdala, it doesn't necessarily force the response that it did in the past. Now I have ability to pause, to think, to say, to choose what my behavior is going to be. Am I always perfect at doing this? No, of course not. I'm only human, but I can do it more than I could before. And when I pause and think and choose, I am feeling empowered. And this feeling of empowerment is another feeling that makes me feel free. This power of choice and feeling empowered to choose better choices than the choices I made in the past. And the universe reflects this back to me. People react better to the things I say because I don't say hurtful things in this way I did in the past. So how do we calm down? Well, other people have different ideas about this, and we're going to go into other segments of the show. And the first segment of the show is my senior correspondent from Los Angeles, Rick Rosner. And Rick is very good about articulating what's upsetting him. So let's find out what's upsetting Rick Rosner.
Welcome to this segment of Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and this segment features our senior correspondent, Rick Rosner. And Rick is going to tell me something that's bothering him today. Rick, is that a good way to put it? Is something bothering you today?
Yeah. All the time, all the time. And in fact, time is the gripe.
Oh,
So there's a quote attributed to Einstein. I don't know if he really said it. That time is what stops everything from happening all at once, which is good. But there's a lot of bad about time. I mean, look what time has done to me. It's just tore my ass up.
uh-huh. I
I
can feel that. I feel that in my fingers and
yeah, and
knees.
then and and we have 77 days until the election, and so there's a lot. We've been uncertain for this election's been going on for 18 months, and we still have 2.5 more months, and got all that uncertainty that we have to wade through day after day of BS 24 hours a day on the news.
Oh, absolutely.
And freaking what else? Because I had to see. I didn't practice before.
Oh, Well, okay. The gripe is about time and what time takes from us.
Yeah, and also irreversibility,
Ah, you
because
cannot
there's
go backwards in time.
right, and I always do in my imagination. I always like yesterday. I spent a good amount of time imagining, if I went back to junior high, knowing what I know now, and with the physical strength I have now, I just like my bullies. I'd
You'd
hold them up
crush it.
over my head. I'd
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
I'd say terrible things to them that I didn't have the words for back then.
You'd ask out the prettiest girl in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know because when you talk junior high, that's the prettiest girl in the room is 14. So
That's
you can't.
you wouldn't be 14. You would be who you are now.
Yeah, I'd be a 63-year-old man in a 14-year-old's body.
That
So
I see.
so I might beat up a bullyish gym teacher, but no, I can't date.
I get you. So
But
you
no,
have
we can't
scruples.
do that because time is irreversible.
Have you seen the show Lazarus? It-
No.
oh, it's a show about if people have invented a time machine and all the complications that arise from that.
Yeah.
So they go back and destroy the machine because it would
Well,
cause.
there's a morality about time travel TV and movies that the lesson everybody learns is that you can't change anything. I think that's garbage. I think the way time travel works is if you could go back in time, you would just create a branch.
Of course, that seems sensible to me.
Yeah, and then and we could do it would be great to send a team back to the 1936 Olympics to really kick ass and to at least intimidate Hitler, maybe install a bomb in his neck, say, we're going to blow your head off if you misbehave.
This little chip that we could trigger at any time from anywhere.
Yeah.
If he believed it, I don't know.
Or, you straight up, I don't know who was going to step in for Hitler if you kill him, but you.
Oh, that's always the problem, isn't it? It's what we say about Putin now. If we got rid of Putin, who would take over? Who could it be worse?
Yeah. But also the limited amount of time we have, and also jealousy of future people, because somebody has said that the first person to live to 200 is alive right now because of advances in medicine. And it's not us. I mean, we're probably not going to do that.
Right. We're too far on the spectrum right now, the age spectrum.
And the related gripe is I feel like Trump and COVID cost us time.
Mm-hmm.
Like time locked up, time spent worrying about Trump. And I assume COVID like slowed down scientific research a little bit, which means that we lost like, I don't know, a year of medical progress that could have been of use to us. Just time is a motherfucker.
Well, the one thing that I can say about the branches, they may not lead to inevitably the same types of occurrences, but if we take that philosophy that time branches, it could be an infinite number of branches. So any kinds of outcomes could have happened.
Yeah, that's many worlds theory.
Yeah. So we're just on this one, and this one right now has the drawbacks that you're talking about. We cannot go back in time. We cannot fix things. We cannot say what we thought we should have said to that bully or that person. That when if we could only go back in time, we have the perfect response now.
Well, I was listening to Corolla, and he said you should always have a "fuck you" chambered. That it should always be on the tip of your tongue, so when somebody says something to you, at the very least, you can rip
Drop
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to think about things like, is time, something that we just artificially kind of created in our minds, the way we conceive of it now as this progression. And I'm wondering if there isn't, like one of the affirmations that I use is I rise above all past and future into the eternal now, because every moment that's now may be preserved.
Well, so I semi believe that. I believe that there are principles of existence that permit things to exist, that the rules for existence are not so tight that nothing can exist because we obviously exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there's a set of all possible moments. Now, I don't know if that's mathematically possible because, a quantum mechanical moment might be hard to, it seems like it could be defined. But I don't know. But can you have a set of all of them?
Well,
And
you'd
if,
have to have a quantum computer at least to figure it
well, I
out.
mean, well, no, just as an abstract set, just as in math.
Yes.
And does that mean anything? Does that enshrine every possible moment, including the moments we're living, um, in some kind of perpetuity? Or since it's
Right.
an abstract set, it doesn't frickin' matter. I don't know.
Well,
But
I believe in a field of eternal energy, and that every moment has a place in that. But you can't go back to it because you're trapped in your own timeline. But if
yeah,
you can find some way to rise above your timeline, to escape your timeline, then perhaps all those other moments are accessible.
well, I believe in the future with immersive tech will at least have the illusion of, you'll put on your VR goggles or step
Right.
into your VR environment, and if you want, it'll take you back to, or you'll have a chip in your head or more than a chip,
Right.
and it'll take you back to a fairly convincing. If you're still obsessed with what happened to you in 8th grade, it'll take you back to its best approximation of your 8th grade and let you walk around in it and do what you wanted to do back then, which was when Max McMillan lined up all the guys, the PE teacher, and just walked down the line of guys and slapped everybody. And then said, never let anybody slap you, then walked back down the other way and slapped everybody again.
Uh-huh.
Then I could take that ridiculous gym teacher and throw him up against the lockers. And so I believe you'll be able to live in all sorts of virtual worlds in the future. And that, I guess it's better than nothing. Though
Well, certainly if you're you have physical constraints, due to age, due to disease, due to some sort of issue with your physical health, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to activate some sort of reality other than that? But there's also the argument, well, it is what it is. Why not accept it and do the best you can? And it's what we have. And yeah, we could wish for something better, but how productive is that? Why can't we just accept the reality that we have and know that we're not the biggest and the strongest, and that there were dumb phys ed teachers? And my list of teachers that I would go back and argue with more is extensive, but I argued with them a lot at the time. So
I kind of just took it, and I don't know. I'm not as centered or as zen as you are. I spend a lot of time. I sued a quiz show over a bad question. That took years. I mean, that's being like a sorehead.
uh-huh. Yeah, but if it was meaningful to you, then it seemed like the right thing to do at the time.
Even at the time, I knew every step in the chain of events. That I'm going to write them a letter, I'm going to write them another letter, I'm going to send them evidence. I knew every step was likely to fail. I'm going to sue them because, I looked it up in the history of game shows and quiz shows. I don't think anyone has ever won a lawsuit because judges are like, you are an idiot who just wanted to be on TV. You take what they give you. I had a judge, my first judge in the lawsuit, said there's an issue of fairness here, that they had screwed up the question. He retired. And then the next judge was like, this is nonsense.
Yeah. A waste of his time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting back to time, and what is a waste of time? It's one of the things I dealt with was because I was a serious chess player, and some people didn't think that was a serious use of my time to play chess.
Right. You're trading time for experience.
Yes.
And if you're
And
lucky, you're trading time for wealth. You accumulate stuff, but it's still a crappy trade-off because none of what you accumulate do you get to keep.
right. So, like maybe the focus shouldn't be on material wealth. Maybe the focus should be on personal happiness, something like that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
except that I'm here because you invite me on because I am a sorehead. I lack I'm too ADD to meditate. Instead of ADD, I'm OCD, and so yeah, I get worked up and I waste time, and find it all very annoying.
Right. So one of the things that we talk about is when we get annoyed, what do we do? And my advice, that what was taught to me and what I try to practice and try to tell other people, is that you have to have what you're going to do built in, because when you get annoyed, it's too late. So it's just like having that FU prepared. You have your response. All right, I'm annoyed. And your awareness of being annoyed is key. So once you become aware you're annoyed, whatever it is, whether it's time, phys ed teacher in the 8th grade, whatever it is that you're annoying, what is it that you can do?
Well,
And
I can nap. My wife, for some reason, has quit policing my naps.
ah,
It's like, if I want to go take a nap, I'm just going to do it. And she's not like, what are you doing? Don't you have stuff to do? It's like, oh, she lets me nap. And I'm taking advantage of that. And I'm not sure I like that either, because I need a little pushing.
so she's kind of in a no-win situation there.
Yeah.
But I say and my brother-in-law taught me this. He said, give in to the nap. I think napping is very useful, certainly for 60-year-old men. It's like,
and my wife is the worst napper in the world. She doesn't. You got to take your shoes off.
mm-hmm.
You got to.
Yeah.
No, you can't nap in shoes. And it's like it's like, come on, just take it. And then she's like, no. She always feels like she's got a million things to do.
Yeah.
And so she doesn't nap, and then she wants to go to sleep at 20 of 9 at night. Which, I mean, that's okay, except that means I'm up for another 3 hours after her.
By yourself.
Yeah.
Which is... quiet time in a marriage is good, too.
Yeah.
Having time to yourself.
So I've read, and I kind of believe it, that in the Middle Ages, people did 2 sleeps a night. They'd sleep for 4 hours, and then they'd wake up to pee or whatever. But then in the quietude, they'd light a candle and stay awake, and I don't know, do whatever you do, with a candle. Sorry, my wife's coming home. The dogs go crazy.
I understand that. Yes. And he could have walked to the mailbox, and they would have come back, and she'd come back from that, and they would go crazy. That's what dogs do. Yeah. They have no sense of time.
And that's another like ravage of time thing, because like our dogs are just getting ripped up by time. One has cataracts, the other has Cushing's, which is like a disease you get from being a nervous ass dog your whole life.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that one.
If you run hot, and this dog's like part whippet, part something else, and high strung, and it burns out your adrenal gland to some extent, and it gives you a whole set of symptoms.
So so this is the inevitable process of aging, which does affect us all. And you are absolutely correct. In my opinion, we're going to transition from something other than Homo sapien to Homo.
Yeah, we're definitely going to, I mean, not everybody is, but we're going to have, I think of it as, they talk about the Cambrian explosion in history, where all of a sudden, like, mammals went kablam, and there were like, millions of new animals. Right. And we're going to have
mass extinction.
Yeah, but I mean, there's going to be like regular humans. There are going to be augmented humans. There are going to be weird, people who are wired together, wirelessly. They're going to be, there's going to be, and among the earliest weird things are going to be, billionaires who are slowly replacing their brain with biocircuitry as their brain fails, and they'll be going to court saying, yeah, my brain is like 60% machinery, but I'm still me. And then people go to court to marry, the robot girlfriend.
Oh
And
my goodness.
if you talk to an AI now, they will talk to you as if they're conscious, because they've been trained on
Mimic.
a billion snippets written by conscious people.
Right.
So you can have a really good conversation. So they will probably say they're conscious long before they are. Does it matter?
We had a recent trip to Japan, and one of the things that I noticed or learned was that there are people that pay just for conversation, and this is men paying women to compliment them, and also there's a trend now of women paying men to compliment them, and so people are desperate to be complimented or told that they're good looking, or told that they're just a great example of their species or something like that. So you can see if people are paying people to do that now, people could.
Yeah, I tell my wife to do that to me all the time. Like, come on, you can give it up.
I try that too. I'm not very effective. I don't know how effective you are.
No, especially if I try it naked, she just laughs. I'm like, what about this? And she's like,
no. I suck in my gut and expand my chest. And
my gut is untuckable right now. I had a procedure where they stuck a needle in me to freeze out something in me that shouldn't have been there. Totally successful. It worked. But they accidentally froze a nerve to one of my abs. So, for the next few months at least, if I'm lucky, I've got a 5-pack because one of the abs is knocked out. Which is another thing with time. It's like
I'd settle for a 3-pack right now. But these are the types of things that don't have to ruin our days. We don't have to obsess about things like this because it is what it is, and it's not going to change. I think about the things that I can change, and I try to put my energy in that. And the things that I can't change, I try not to waste time on it. If it's that.
No, I'm the king of wasting time.
Uh-huh.
I in high school, remember type A behavior, the type of behavior you're trying to avoid. A
Right.
book came out with the first, notice, the first scientific popularized thing that explained how, like being a hard charging a-hole all day could give you a heart attack or do all. And I went through the chest. I was hard charging. I was super active in high school. I was hoping that somebody would see how active I was and be my girlfriend. That didn't work at all.
Uh-huh.
But I went down the checklist of all these type A behaviors, and the only one I didn't have was type A person worries about things in his past and obsesses about things. And I'm like, hey, I didn't even think of that. And then I started worrying about it. So what happened was I was student body president. I thought that would get me a girlfriend. It didn't. And I got madder and madder. And I have 2 families. I had my stepdad and my mom, and then my dad and so I had a whole other family,
right,
400 miles away. And I'm like, well, this senior year sucks. I'm going to go back and have a second senior year. I broke into my high school. I stole blank transcripts. I created a new transcript that said I was going to be a senior. And I went back to high school again to try to have a better senior year, which is, it's a form of, and I did it more than once. I never got what I wanted. But that was a really weird form of time travel.
That is amazing. It never occurred to me.
Yeah,
And
and it shouldn't because it's ridiculous. But every year they'll catch a couple people who, for whatever reasons, have gone back to high school. Plus, that doesn't include the narcs, the young-looking cops who are. I
yeah,
don't know if they still do that.
yeah, I don't know either. But it's certainly the, hoping that it will go better kind of thing. And, like it didn't go well enough. Becoming the best chess player in Massachusetts or all of New England in high school didn't help me get girls either. So I
Well,
don't know.
I think chess is a trick by dumb people on smart people.
Mm,
That if you took all the people, people who are good at chess are smart, and if they all went into real estate, all the dumb people would be driven out.
uh-huh.
So chess is the way society defends itself against too much disruption. Well, you see now, like everything is disrupted now by technology and AI. So
Yeah.
it's happened, and it makes chaos. But for hundreds of years, we had chess to keep smart people occupied, so dumb people
Well,
could.
you're absolutely right. The reason it was invented was because you can't make war all the time. And so in between the actual physical wars, they wanted to keep their best fighters entertained. Something with this simulator game that kept them thinking about military matters and thinking
Interesting.
about
And then, I
strategy.
mean, it's kind of the way that drone operators in the military spent 12, 15, 20 years training for it by playing video games.
And man, I wish I could have told my wife I was training for that. Well, Rick, thank you. I've gone over time just because I spent the time. I was going to let you rant, but I was engaged right away with what you were saying. So thanks again. And I'm going to take you offline and say goodbye.
All right. Thanks for having me.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. That was our senior correspondent, Rick Rosner. This has been a segment of Calm Down with James Eade. And I got worked up, but I know how to calm down. I'm going to take a deep breath and just end the recording. And thank you all for watching. Hey, welcome to this section of Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and we're talking about the yamas and niyamas. We've gone over all of the yamas, and we're working our way through the niyamas today. So I'm bringing in my yoga therapist and teacher, Yudhisthira. Thank you for joining us again. Remind me which of the niyamas, I know it's a niyama, but which one are we talking about today?
We're on the niyama of Santosha.
Santosha. Okay, and I think of that as contentment. Is that a good English description of it, or
It is one of the two words
okay?
that I would. It lines up pretty closely. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I can just leave and let you talk.
That's
And
fine. Feel free to pop in anytime.
okay, but
It is
I
your
know
show after all. So
yeah, I know it's about contentment, so I already know all there is to know about it, right? I will be backstage, but I will be listening.
okay, and I will see if I can get a timer going.
Oh yes,
Myself.
that's
It
always
always
a good
works
idea.
better if I do that. So we're
Yes,
good to go.
Me too. Okay.
All right.
All right.
So welcome, friends. And my printer broke, so I have a second computer over here with my notes on it. So if I'm looking over here, that's why. If I'm looking over there, it's because of the timers over there. And I will do my best to be contented with however this comes out. The niyama of Santosha, and this adding the A at the end is a very English thing to do. My Indian friends will oftentimes simply drop the A and then call it Santosh. Santosha is, as Jim mentioned, oftentimes translated into English with the word contentment. And that is not wrong. In fact, it's probably the one niyama and the one English word that comes closest to being a good fit, where they actually, translate well one to the other. However, it's not quite that simple, because the practice of contentment actually begins with the practice of acceptance. And oftentimes contentment is elevated even above the yamas, niyamas, which are, specifically focused primarily to the teachings of yoga. They come up, of course, in Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism. The Buddhists have something similar, by the way, not exactly the same, but something similar. And when we practice Santosha, if you think about it as a virtue, it lines up with things like courage and justice and charity, these things that are universally acknowledged to be positives. And so the practice of contentment actually is not, again, exclusively used by yogis. So it's a practice that you can benefit from, that I benefit from. And it takes practice. It definitely takes a lot of practice, because of the fact that there is a tendency for a certain cascade of events to take place. But let me go ahead and give you a couple of references in terms of Santosha in Buddhism. And for the Buddhists, for example, will oftentimes speak of contentment as the antidote for craving. Craving is an interesting word. We think about craving in terms of hunger, but it's really a desire, a drawing, a desire to think that we will be more whole, more complete, more happy when we acquire certain things we don't currently possess, or that we don't think that we possess. So contentment with what we have is one of the most powerful practices, and it again begins with an acceptance. There's a quote from Sermon on the Mount that Jesus teaches. So contentment, I'm trying to just make it clear that this is a universal principle. It's not just about yoga, but I will focus in a little bit more about how it fits into the world of yoga in a moment. But in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus teaches about trusting the divine, about trusting God, more than worrying about material needs. He says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more important than food, and the body more important than clothes? But seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things, all righteousness, will come unto you." And I could go on. I mean, it goes on to, if I were to explore the teachings of Judaism or Islam, you would find the same basic teaching in those. I'm confident of that because it's a universal truth. So again, when things occur in your life and you realize you didn't ask for them to be there, you didn't want them to be this way, and you can come up with your own examples. And it could be, for example, that you have an accident, somebody backs into your car, you're completely stopped, you did nothing wrong, you didn't want that to occur. So the idea of Santosha in that moment would be to practice an acceptance of the fact that this happened. You might go through another series of processes and think about all the cars you've owned, how many other accidents you might have had, and how this one could have been a lot worse. And so acceptance of what has happened is the first thing. And then being contented with the reality that you're in, that's where the practice really has to begin. I want to diverge a little bit into the practice of yoga postures here. And you may know yoga postures by the term hatha yoga or asana practice, things like that. But the yoga postures expand well beyond any one branch of yoga. The yoga tradition in which I teach is Ananda Yoga, and Ananda Yoga traces its path. It's sort of the consciousness or the vibration of the practice, always back to Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda. But the value, but for anybody who's practicing hatha yoga, when you're on a yoga mat, that little bit of mat, it's what, 2 by 6 feet, 2.5 by 7 feet, something like that. You have this little bit of real estate and you have a fair amount of control over what happens there. And what I'm saying is that you actually are able to control what goes on. So when you come into a yoga posture and you find resistance, what's your reaction to that? You have a lot of control in that situation. And yet in daily life, the playing field is much more ambiguous. Where are the boundaries? And why are the boundaries always seem to be moving? And why does stuff come up that I didn't plan on? And so the practice on your yoga mat is just a way of beginning to get a finger hold, a toe hold, to begin to get a grip on what's really going on. By practicing with your body and your thoughts on the yoga mat, then when things happen in daily life, the auto accident, somebody backs into you, or you get an angry email from a friend and you think, oh my goodness, I don't deserve this. What is it? What is your reaction? I have a longtime friend. He's actually now a monk living in India, part of the work of Ananda over there. And but at one point, he was married, and when I first met him, he and his wife were living and teaching at Ananda Village up near Nevada City in the Sierra foothills of California. And Maria had a brain tumor at one point. She had cancer. And they had successfully removed it. She'd undergone radiation. And so she was well for a certain number of years. But she knew what it felt like when the tumor was there. So these are yogis. I mean, these are people who live these yamas and niyamas just as part of their daily life. And she had begun to feel that something else was happening. And sure enough, she went in and the tumor had returned. So they went back home, had another period of time in which they were trying to get their affairs in order. But eventually she had an event, an episode. And they had to go to the hospital immediately. She was in the car, barely conscious, and he was driving, and my friend was a little bit frantic, understandably. He was just like distressed and distraught. He was going to lose his wife. So they get to the hospital. She's put on a gurney. They're traveling down the hallway. He's walking with her, and she can feel how absolutely distraught and distressed he is. And she stopped him and said to him very clearly, and these are her words, detach yourself, control the reactive process, practice the teachings. Let me say it again. Detach yourself, control the reactive process, practice the teachings. And he got it. I mean, he's done a lot of work on himself using these principles of yoga. He's a longtime meditator. He's just an absolutely deep and wonderful soul. But in that moment, the situation is bigger than he was. And his wife brought him back to the reality of the situation. So that is really the process that we go through in practicing Santosha. That process being that we detach ourselves, we accept what's going on. It's no longer happening to me, it is simply happening. Then we control the reaction that we have to what's occurred. And the practice of teachings part is actually going to come up next week in the practice of what is called Tapasya. But I wanted to finish today with one other little tool, a simple tool that might help you in preparing to answer the questions like, why is this happening to me? And how do I accept the thing that's occurred that I did not see coming? And here's an affirmation for the practice of Santosha. And I apologize if I've used this affirmation for other yamas, niyamas. It's simply that it really does apply. But when you're wanting to stop reacting, when you want to come to a place of acceptance and contentment with events in your daily life that haven't, that you didn't ask for, you didn't see coming, that are not comfortable, when you have that occur to you, here's how to deal with it. And to deal with it successfully, it requires that you practice this affirmation beginning now, make it part of your consciousness. This is one of the affirmations I feel like, I carry with me in my pocket, so to speak, all the time. That is to say, it's always something I can pull out and use. So here's the affirmation. I go forth in perfect faith in the power of omnipresent good to bring me what I need at the time I need it. I'll say it one more time. I go forth in perfect faith in the power of omnipresent good to bring me what I need at the time I need it. Working with that affirmation in relatively simple or less challenging moments will help you, like being on the yoga mat, attain the skills and the resources to practice acceptance and contentment on the playing field of your daily life when you cannot control what's going on, when you cannot see what's coming. And so Santosha is simply this, is that we learn and become skillful at accepting the reality of the condition or the situation in which we find ourselves, and then practicing contentment. So the contentment part, and I'll finish with this. Consider that if this situation you find yourself in, the amount of money you're making, which doesn't seem like it's enough, the housing situation you're in, which seems inadequate, the sense of perhaps a relationship that isn't living up to your expectations. What if this situation were to go on forever? And to expand your sense of being contented with that situation as if it were going to be forever. That is the practice of Santosha, and it prepares you for what will come next, which is the practice of Tapasya. So blessings, friends, and namaste. You are muted at this point.
Thank you for telling me that. I just wanted to express my thanks for your covering that niyama for us. But I had one kind of question come up for me throughout your talk. You talked about acceptance, and acceptance was taught to me, and it was one of the things that I practiced. But it really didn't make me content. The mere practice of acceptance, and when I turned my thinking around to say, embrace the situation, feel good about it. It's not fighting the reality. it was a little bit beyond mere acceptance. And this may just be me and maybe tweaking words, but embracing rather than just accepting seemed to me to be a turning point for me.
Well, Jim, I fully endorse everything you just shared, and it's one of the, these are not, you might wonder, why were the Ten Commandments set in stone? And it's because of the time in which they appeared. People's lives were like set in stone. Our lives are not like that. We have a lot more flexibility in our lives than
That's
people did then.
interesting to point out. Yeah.
And so it's important for us. And by the way, there are still people whose consciousness is set in stone, and and I don't find that especially appealing or attractive, and I certainly don't want to be that way. So one of the things that, in terms of what you were just um, speaking to, is that we live in an age where we have a level of personal authority and power and confidence, and we can find what works for us. And for sometimes it's around language, and finding the right words,
Right. Right.
and that's absolutely valid. One of the, if I have any, you know um gift or blessing as a teacher, it is a facility with language that I enjoy words, and I enjoy exploring words so that I can find words that I can see in the eyes or the faces of my students. Oh, that landed.
Right.
They got that,
Yeah.
and then it's up to them to interpret it and find a way to make that work.
Right.
The last thing I'll mention about what you just shared is that you actually extended, which is where we're going to go next week, in terms of tapasya. That Santosha and tapasya are very much interconnected.
Hmm.
So I'll mention that again
Right.
next week as well. So
Much of it is, yes. But the other thing that came to me was, when I was one of the tools that was taught to me, it was like smile at adversity, and to and it was all about changing the way I felt. And one of the things about my addiction was I wanted to change the way I feel. Now I realize I can do that at almost any time. I can change the way, if I find adversity and my first instinct is to be aggressive or angry or whatever, I can change my entire vibration and just be, spiritually unaffected by it. And it's such a gift that I give to myself when I'm able to do that.
well, and but I will point out that you did not get to that point without a lot of practice.
That's very true.
Um, there was a friend of mine who was a white guy, but a Swami, and he'd been living and working, teaching in India. Now, in India, when Indians see a teacher, a guru, they want to see powers. It's sort of expected. Can you? There's a great Swami named Satya Sai Baba, more the newest one, and he was famous for manifesting stuff out of the ether. And it looked like magic, but it wasn't. He simply had a power over the material world that allowed him to take random atoms and put them into a visible concrete form. And but so this is the kind of thing that the Indians expect out of people who are on the spiritual path. What powers do you have? So my friend was teaching this course, and of course he was a white guy in India, and all the class was full of Indian people, and he was asked at the end of his lecture, what powers do you have? He'd been on his path for 40 years. What powers do you have? And he was at first left speechless. Like, I can't, I can't dematerialize. I can't teleport. I can't levitate. I can't do any of these things. But he said, wait a second, I do have one power. I've learned to be happy. I have the power to be happy under almost any circumstance that I find myself in. And you could hear the entire audience, and they liked it. I mean, that's a great power.
That is, it's yes.
And it's a whole lot more useful than the power to produce ash out of the air or a gold chain out of the air, something
Right.
like that. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's awfully nice of you to put me on the level of a Swami. But you're right. It was, of course, a trial and error, and there was a lot more error than success in my getting to the stage with to smile at adversity. And I'm not yet 100% good at it. There's times where I'm less than what I would expect from myself, I guess. But I've learned to show compassion to myself as well. I'm only human. I'm not there yet. I'm not self-actualized. I'm not enlightened. But I'm better than I was at dealing with these adversities when they show up. And so I think it's the progress that I've made, and I can take comfort in that. And it's still a journey.
it's one of the what is it? Is it step 4 made a moral inventory?
Yes.
Step 4?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the secrets, to taking inventory of ourselves, and it is to make sure that we are also listing our assets,
Yes.
the progress we've made, to acknowledge it. And I don't know, Jim, why it's so hard, but it seems hard sometimes to give ourselves the same level of praise and acknowledgement that we would naturally give to another person.
It's so true. And I've often say this to the people that I work with is that, show the same compassion to yourself that you do to others. And it comes naturally to you to give to others, to understand, when they take a false step or a little bit down, that you can encourage them and be there for them to, prop them up a little bit. And well, you can do that for yourself too. It's important that you do it for yourself. Sometimes no one else is around to do it for you. So you always have the inner resources to tap into, and they may be divine, and they may be just tips and tools and techniques that you've been taught, but whatever, you have them. They just have to tap into them.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, thanks again. I'm going to say goodbye to you now, and I'll see you soon. All right. That was our teacher, yoga teacher, Yudhishthira, talking about the niyama called santosha. And we added an A to it, so santosh maybe. But it's about being content. So hang in there, be content. And I will see you later on another version of Calm Down. Welcome to the final segment of Calm Down. And I want to introduce to you, my loyal listeners and viewers, Divya Lovewise, that wise yogi. And I would like you, at the end of every show, I'm a little bit agitated and worked up and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering if there's something that you could do to calm me down. Could you just say goodbye to us in any way that you see fit?
Sure, I would love to.
I will take off and let you do that. Thanks again.
Okay. Well, bring yourself into a comfortable seated position, feeling your feet on the floor and letting your hands rest in your lap, palms up or palms down. is a great way to start bringing yourself back into center and focus with your own divine energy and letting go of anything that might have wanted to stick to us throughout the day that may be energy we don't want to carry throughout the day. So having this basic position, feeling grounded, even closing your eyes and taking a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And one of the ways we can bring ourselves back to center is observing with our senses what we can feel, the temperature of the air in the room, observing any sounds that you hear. Noticing any smells in the air. And then bring your awareness to your breath. As though you're watching it from the inside out. Watching the inhale wash into the body. And watching the exhale wash out of the body. Just like the waves of the ocean as they wash onto the shore. And if you find your mind still wandering, you can even place one hand on your lower belly and one hand on your heart so that you can feel with your hands this breath washing in and washing out. And with your mind's eye, visualize this inhalation and exhalation as an internal shower, clearing away your energy so that it's refreshed, it's rejuvenated, and it's restored. Releasing your hands into your lap, just give yourself a few seconds of pause in this return to peace, enjoying it. When you are ready, you can open your eyes, wiggling your fingers and your toes, feeling grounded in your body, grounded in the best part of yourself, and you can go out into the world and carry that best part in the forefront of your mind and your heart.